The Fast and the Furious is known for many things. Fast cars, crazy action, and lies?
What's this all about, Dom?
Yeah, that's right. The movie franchise that you've grown to love for nearly 20 years has been lying to you all along. They rewrite history, showcase false facts, and have created some of the most ridiculous scenes ever put on film. Check out our awesome video, but before you do that, click subscribe. You'll join our notification squad and be the first to know of new content.
You tell your boss exactly who did this. Tell him there's more coming.
Vin Diesel is like Superman. When Letty came back for Fast 6, fans knew they would get a dramatic scene when Dom, played by Vin Diesel, finally rescues his wife and they happily reunite. No one could have predicted that it would involve a tank, 2 bridges, and flying bodies through the air, but that's exactly what happened. In a moment that defied logic, the filmmakers, and most likely producer Vin Diesel himself, showcased a daring rescue plan. As Letty climbed to the front of the giant tank, Dom saw that she was going to fall to her death, so he did the next logical thing by climbing out of his car on the other side of the bridge. In a matter of seconds, Dom was able to leap upwards, grab Letty, and crash land into a windshield. Not only would Dom's leap have been physically impossible, but the momentum from the crash landing would have done a lot more damage than that. Sure, we've seen Diesel play superheroes like XXX, Groot, and Riddick, but Dom is merely a criminal street racer. His leap through the sky looked like something out of a Superman film rather than a street racing movie. This is just one of many scenes where Dom was made to be this larger-than-life hero. They must have cut the scene where he was kidnapped by a top-secret agency and injected with superhuman powers. That must be where he was during the events of Too Fast, Too Furious, the only film that the character didn't appear in.
10 tons of top-of-the-line security.
Do I want to know how you know all that?
I had a life before you knew me, O'Connor. Let's just leave it at that, all right?
TEU'S computer skills. Other than some amnesia and characters getting killed off, a lot of Dom's crew in the Fast and the Furious series has remained relatively the same. One of the biggest exceptions to this is the character of TEU'S. Played by Ludacris is a lucky role that has expanded his career for multiple decades. The writers of the series completely rewrote the character of TEU'S, lied to fans, and expected us to believe it all. When TEU'S first appears in the film Too Fast, Too Furious, he has a huge afro, wears a mechanical jumpsuit, and spends a lot of his time hitting on the girls down at the street races. He provides some assistance to Brian, but was pretty much a non-factor for the movie. Fast forward to Fast 5, and Ludacris returned to the team for a huge heist. Only this time he has not only undergone a huge makeover, but he's now some type of computer genius that can break into safes, crack computer codes, and has some incredible hacking skills. I guess while TEU'S was missing from the Fast and the Furious Light reboot in 2009, he was busy attending some sort of hacking school online. It's like a computer hacker character was written, and they decided to make it TEU'S at a later point when Ludacris was cast back into the film. After a couple films seeing TEU'S in action, fans have pretty much accepted his role, but it's still funny to go back to Too Fast, Too Furious and see how different the character was.
We're gonna do this big! Hold on, Rome! Hold on!
Landing on a yacht. One of the climax scenes in Too Fast, Too Furious involves Brian making a daring chase scene towards a yacht. Yep, the filmmakers decided that in just the second sequel, cars chasing other cars wasn't good enough. What happened next looked like something out of Dukes of Hazzard. Brian took his car, launched it up through the air, and crash-landed it right on the yacht. While it came across well on the screen, this was one of the earliest examples of the unrealistic and unnatural stunts used in the franchise. Let's point out everything wrong with this scene. In the moments before the car flew into the air, the whole windshield was shot and kicked out. The open air from the windshield would take away a ton of momentum from the car, causing it to plummet into the water a lot sooner than the movie shows. Once the car hits the yacht, it magically crash lands and stops any forward momentum. In reality, the car would have flipped, turned over, or kept going right into the water. Basically, any realistic situation would have seen Rome and Brian swimming for their lives in the bottom of the ocean. The scene also cleverly cuts out multiple shots to showcase what exactly the car drove onto to launch itself into the air like that. They would need some sort of crazy angle to make that jump. It's unclear what the vehicle was speeding across when it made that leap of faith.
You realize we're talking about going up against the most powerful guy in all of Rio?
Yes, we are.
Then we're gonna need a team.
Driving with a tether. You can't make a new Fast and Furious movie without having some type of crazy heist or escape scene. In Fast 5, this scene involved a giant safe that was not tethered to one vehicle, but was actually attached to two of them. The safe was dragged out of a building and then controlled by Dom and Brian as they raced through the streets to avoid authorities. The whole scene looked awesome on film and was actually one of the biggest highlights of the movie. The only thing that went wrong is that everything that happened worked so well. Both cars managed to stay within equal distance. That's fine, because Dom and Brian would have shown their driving expertise through the years. The dual tethers, forces, and basic physics make the rest of the scene a complete fabrication. Something crazy would have gone wrong with that safe. Never mind the fact that it smashed into all kinds of objects and nearly killed innocent bystanders. But the tethers never got stuck on anything so bad that the cars didn't flip or become completely destroyed. During one part of the scene, the safe actually bounces off a tree and the tree still stands perfectly fine. Not only do they manage to drag the safe out for miles and miles, but the two manage to switch it with an empty safe so they can cash in and enjoy millions of dollars for completing the heist.
I'll ride with you, Toretto.
The strength of Dom and Hobbs. Dwayne Johnson is one of Hollywood's strongest stars, and he has proven that time and time again. This is the same guy who spent the early part of his career winning championships in the WWE as The Rock. He only bulked up even more when he left to star in movies like Hercules, San Andreas, and Central Intelligence. The whole Fast and Furious franchise changed when Johnson signed up for Fast 5. He brought fresh life to the series and made a great antagonist to Dom and his family before eventually teaming up with them on various missions. When Johnson was introduced in the movie as Agent Hobbs, fans quickly learned that he wasn't one to back down from a fight. As impressive as Hobbs is, his brawl with Dom was downright ridiculous and unrealistic. It started off well enough as Dom and Hobbs traded blow by blow. The grittiness of these two going at it was fun to watch, and even better to look back on after they had some real-life beef during the filming of Fate of the Furious. Then the fight got out of hand. They smashed each other through walls. They threw each other through windows, which they did multiple times. As the fight neared its end, both men merely a streak of blood going down their face. In real life, they would have been bloodied and bruised up more than a UFC fighter. Both were walking fine after the scene, showed no signs of a concussion, and went to drive high-speed vehicles like nothing ever happened.
The minute you put Letty on the cover, she was dead, bro.
Letty is dead. Many beloved characters have died in the Fast and Furious franchise. Han was murdered. Giselle sacrificed her life to save Han. Vince and Jesse, two Fast and Furious originals, also met their demise. And this in with a countless number of baddies, and the Fast and the Furious death toll has been pretty high. For a few years, fans thought there was one more character added to this list. Letty. Dom's wife appeared in the 2009 Fast and Furious, but she met her shocking demise right in the opening scene of the film. This set off a chain of events and eventually led Dom to find a new love in his life. As revealed during the closing credits of Fast 5, it was all a ruse. We were lied to all along, and Letty was actually alive. Taking one of the biggest missing character tropes in movie history, Letty had suspiciously gotten amnesia from the explosion that had supposedly taken her life, and in typical fashion, her big reunion with Dom ended up including a gunshot to Dom's shoulder. As annoying as it was to play with fans and reverse her death, the cheap storyline didn't do any favors. Letty eventually regained her memory, but fans will always have the memory of being toyed with. Now, if only they could bring Giselle and Han back from the dead. Now, there's a story for the next film.
Dom, cars don't fly! Cars don't fly!
The longest plane runway in the world. The stunts in the Fast and the Furious franchise have tackled all types of vehicles. There was the yacht in Too Fast, Too Furious, a giant unmanned drone in Furious 7, and a submarine in the Fate and the Furious. Fast 6 took us to another form of transportation, the airplane. The climax of the film takes place on a giant cargo plane as Dom and the team attempt to stop Owen Shaw from escaping and continuing his rampage. The scene features all of the classic Furious elements that make for a great finish. Fast cars, huge explosions, and shocking twists. The only problem, the plane travels down the runway for about 13 minutes. This would make the runway that it travels on around 26 miles long. Yeah, there's no runway in the world that long. In actuality, the longest runway is approximately 3 miles long. In reality, the planes would have skidded off the tracks and Dom's heroic escape would have likely resulted in his death. Knowing these facts takes a lot away from the scene, maybe if they set it up a little differently, but it's really hard to suspend belief when the planes just keep chugging along on the endless runway and all the cars happily follow along. The plane could have gone a little slower, not started moving right away, or turned around a few times once the plane was being overtaken by Dom and his crew.
You don't send a man to do a woman's job.
The bathing suit fingerprints. There are many other films and television inspirations that can be found in the Fast and Furious series. This includes the James Bond films, Dukes of Hazzard, Mission Impossible, and a number of different heist films. Taking a page right out of the former television show CSI, one scene in the film tries to showcase a creative way for capturing fingerprints. In the film Fast 5, Giselle and Han must find a way to capture the fingerprints of the main villain, crime lord Herman Reyes. To do this, Giselle decides to use her body to capture those fingerprints. While at the beachside villa, Giselle approaches Reyes in a skimpy bathing suit, and he does exactly what she wanted, pats her on the butt. Minutes later, they are back at the gang's hideout, showcasing the fingerprint that they have captured. Not only would it be nearly impossible to lift this print off the bathing suit, but they did nothing to preserve it. Han actually casually enters the scene holding the bathing suit bottom, mixing his own fingerprints and DNA in the process. It wasn't placed in a bag or anywhere to help preserve the evidence. Then, using a blacklight, the fingerprint appears and the team is able to proceed from there. It's only a small moment in the film, but it gives viewers a false pretense about how fingerprints and CSI technology actually works. It's too bad Giselle, played by Gal Gadot, didn't have her Wonder Woman skills in tow. That could have actually helped obtain the prints without needing to sacrifice her own body.
Can he drive? You know what DK stands for? Donkey Kong? Drift King.
Tokyo Drift technology. For many casual viewers, the timeline in the Fast and Furious franchise may be a complicated one. After the first 2 films, a third entry was made with a whole new cast except the now fan favorite Han. Set in Tokyo, the film features a lot of racing, but more significantly, it showcases Han's death towards the end of the film. When the original stars returned for the 2009 Fast and Furious, Han was back in the movie, alive and well. The filmmakers decided to change the timeline of events and set Tokyo Drift in the future, like that was their plan all along. In actuality, it was all just a big lie. The screenwriters managed to rewrite history to fit their story, but there was a lot of glaring facts in Tokyo Drift that can dismiss their whole timeline. One of the more obvious ways you can tell the timeline is different is the use of the technology. According to the rewrites, the events of Tokyo Drift would have to take place sometime in 2011 through 2013. In the film, all of the characters are using flip phones with technology straight out of 2006. There's not a modern phone in sight. The vehicles used in the film are all also manufactured before 2006. Even though they tried hard to write Han back in, it comes off a little forced and only makes viewers more confused as they try to cover their tracks and write something that feels legitimate.
Hey, thought you could leave without saying goodbye.
The greatest kiss of all time. The 8th film in the franchise featured a lot of hype before it came out. The movie would have scenes that took place in New York City, as well as being the only American film shooting in Cuba. It is the first one, besides Tokyo Drift, to not feature Paul Walker in his role of Brian after his tragic passing. Charlize Theron was cast as the main villain in the film, which pleased many fans after her awesome performance in Mad Max. A lot of talk and speculation was also made when the first trailer was released. Dom, the leader of the group and someone who has always preached family, decides to turn his back on the crew and join the evil side. Of course, the whole plot would showcase more complicated details than this, but it also meant that Charlize Theron and Vin Diesel would share an on-screen kiss. That alone is all fine and well, but once Vin Diesel started doing press for the film, things got a little uncomfortable. Diesel went around to multiple interviews proclaiming that the on-screen kiss between him and Theron was the greatest kiss of all time. No one believed his lie when he first said it, and he continued to spread it through the press. Even Theron herself denied that the kiss was great and even went on further to say that he kissed like a dead fish. Diesel's lie is as obvious as they come. Small clips and images before the movie was released showcased how plain the kiss looks on screen. And who can forget about poor Michelle Rodriguez? Diesel has kissed her on screen multiple times and never made those declarations to the press. This may in fact be worse than Vin claiming the last two Furious films were Best Picture worthy at the Oscars. Whoa!
Oh, I wish I didn't see that.
What did you think was the biggest lie? Is there anything that we missed? Where should the franchise go next? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to Screen Rant on YouTube so you can stay up to date with our awesome videos.